Welcome back to another episode of The Founder, a show that features entrepreneurs and their early stories of ingenuity, struggle, and perseverance to get their companies off the ground. We do our best to capture the uncensored, uncovered look behind the curtain into what founders really face when getting started. I'm your host, Kallaway. With a background in speech, stand-up comedy, and radio in his early life, our founder guest on today's episode went to law school in an attempt to figure out what he wanted to do long-term. After graduating, he found himself practicing corporate litigation law for the next several years and experienced a broad exposure to a variety of different businesses and business models. Although he was building a successful law career, he always felt in the back of his mind that it wasn't his calling, and he wanted to make the jump to technology. Through a series of twists and turns, he became a serial entrepreneur, launching software companies across automotive, mail catalogs, radio control flying, and newspaper syndication, and selling his companies to bigger players along the way. He eventually wound up building an event management platform for radio control events, a space he had a ton of personal passion for. Along the way, he started branching out to events beyond radio control to include things like archery, bodybuilding, and golf. Those were the early verticals that laid the foundation for Eventsquid. Today at Eventsquid, this founder and his team have built a comprehensive event management solution. Their software helps event planners handle everything they need to execute a flawless event, including things like event promotion, setup, the mobile app, day of check-in, badges, speaker management, vendor management, reporting, and more. They work with a variety of clients across all industries and have built solutions that facilitate virtual events as well. This was an inspiring interview that sheds light on the hustle and grind that entrepreneurs face day in and day out when they're trying to build something big. I hope you enjoyed as much as I did. Now introducing the founder of Eventsquid, Michael Kranitz. Let's get it. Michael, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for coming on.
Appreciate it. I appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Yeah, I'm really excited to talk to you about Eventsquid. So before we dive into the origin story and kind of your background, which I'm really fascinated by, can you just provide an anchor point on Eventsquid? So, what does the company look like today? What's your mission, vision, size, and products you sell?
So the vision of the software is to enable planners to do what they do better. And with more joy and more efficiency. It drives every aspect of the product. And there are many competitors in the event management space. And the only way to thrive in that kind of environment is to make an impression on the person who's using it or the persons who are using it, and then also be able to execute the things that they require. More than many other disciplines, and I've been involved in quite a number of different software disciplines, event planners know exactly what they want. They know what they need. They know what they have to accomplish. They can compromise in a few areas, but they really have to have what they want. And so our software enables them to handle promotion of their event, setup of the event website, the mobile app, on-day check-in, sometimes badges, virtual events, reporting, speaker management, agenda management, and the things that are collateral to running your event. So that's what the software does. And we'd like to think that it does it pretty well based on the reactions of our clients.
So kind of before we talk about Eventsquid and how you've grown the business and built the product, I'd love to get kind of a walkthrough of your background. So I was doing research, and you've had a ton of exits, a ton of different software companies, and you had a career before that as a lawyer as well. So I'd love for you to just, as slow or as fast as you'd like, kind of build up your career and the twists and turns that it's gone through.
Well, if you go all the way back, I went to law school because I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And I had an extensive background in speech, stand-up comedy, radio. And so communication was thematic and what I had done. And my mom said, well, why don't you just go to law school? And so I'm
As all good moms do.
That's what moms do. And it was better than, I don't know, driving the Fritos truck and restocking the 7-Eleven. So I went that way. And it's important because it took me 12 years to figure out that that's not what I wanted to do. But the experience was so valuable to me that I would do it again. So it's boot camp for business, right? And so I was in corporate reorganization law, litigation over retail bankruptcies representing banks, airlines, medium to high profile cases. And when you work those cases, you get exposed to a massively wide array of different business models and constructs. So in my third city, and after having gotten approved by the bar in 3 different states, which is just, I don't know why I do these things, Texas, Illinois, and Ohio, I realized that I had been moving cities because I didn't like what I was doing so much. And I wanted to make the transfer over into technology. And the first question I would get is, well, do you want to be in-house counsel? And no, I don't want to be in-house counsel. I really want to be involved in technology. And this is the late 90s. So boxed software. AOL was sending plastic discs out to your mail, or sometimes a CD, so that you would join AOL. The internet was just coming online. CompuServe and Prodigy, were the leading services. There was Genie, and there were, kind of chat rooms, and it was weird, right? So I get into 96, 97, I start to see this space. And at the same time, through whim and whimsy, because I can't explain any other reason why, I was writing a book on auto leasing. And I had written a book on bankruptcy law for accountants, as dry as you could possibly imagine. So by comparison, leasing was really entertaining. It was like a murder mystery. And auto leasing was really big back then, but nobody knew how it worked. And about a year after I got into it, the Federal Reserve Board passed Regulation M, which required all these disclosures on a lease because it was really cloak and backroom kind of stuff. And dealers were making a lot of money and consumers were paying too much money. So I write this book, and I'm writing the book. And in the process of writing the book, I'm thinking, wouldn't it be cool if there could be a software program where you could compute your own lease before you went into the dealer? So I literally, wandering through what was then the biggest retail chain, CompUSA, I see a guy in the book aisle, in the computer programming books aisle, and I just start talking to him. And it turns out he's a Visual Basic programmer, which was the programming platform du jour for Windows. And we get together, and I made the program work in Excel. And then he put it into Visual Basic, which was a Windows installed app, in today's parlance, a program. And we started selling it. And one thing leads to another, and I'm trying to market it, and I'm sending letters out, because that's what you did back then, letters and phone calls. And the editor at Motor Trend magazine picked it up and said, "This is phenomenal." And they wrote a review, and I started to see some action. And I'm still practicing law full time.
Right.
And
2 careers.
It was nuts. And about 3 months into that, I get a letter from a woman in Wisconsin who shared a story, a handwritten note. My husband died 2 years ago, or a year and a half ago, and our lease is now coming up. And I was really worried that I wouldn't know how to do this because he handled this. But I saw your software in Motor Trend magazine, and I got it, and I constructed my lease deal, and I went into the dealer, and when I walked out, I felt like $1 million, like I could handle my life. And I just wanted to thank you for that. And that was the moment where I said to my wife, I want to do this full time. I want to write software to help people enrich their lives in whatever way is possible. Because the gratification of hearing what you did touch somebody else's life like that makes it really personal. And so then I left the law at the end of 96 and embarked on what has become 5 year, one after the next serial entrepreneur binge in creating and selling businesses in the software realm.
Totally. And so for a lot of people listening, people are unicorns who sell one company and are lucky enough to like go through that. You went through so many. Can you just quickly walk through what those different companies, Lease Wizard, Drive Off, Kango, Easy Team Manager, walk through all those and just kind of what you were thinking when you created that software and kind of how the exit happened?
I wasn't thinking well enough, I can tell you that. So the origin story on driveoff.com, which wasn't my first exit, there was one before that, but it leads to that because it wasn't an exit, it was an acquisition. And then I continued working. The company that was making the discs and the boxes for my software for Lease Wizard, that's what they did. They were a production company, warehousing, pick, pack, and ship fulfillment company. So I went to the president and I said, do you have a digital business division? And she said, no, what's that? And I said, well, there's this internet thing, it's coming along and I think it's going to be big and you should be in it. And she said, well, who would run it? And I said, I would. And so this was the opportunity to take less money, but get out of the law and go do that. So they gave me a desk and a phone and a computer and said, make money. It's not easy because I had to build the business from scratch. So I took the content that I had, the auto leasing content, and I parsed it up into licensable chunks that I could license out to a very brand new company in the auto space called Edmunds, who's now huge, right? CBS, Excite, which was then a big search engine, and Motor Trend, of course, and a bunch of other outlets. So I would license the content and take in leads of people who were looking to buy cars. And I would sell those leads out to Edmunds and other companies that were processing, that were selling to auto dealers. So it takes a while to build the network. And I'm building the network, and I started in January of 97. And by May or June of 97, we had made $1,000. And the son-in-law of the owner would come into my office and say, show me the money. And, because Cuba Gooding's line was big back then. Show me the money, Kranitz. We make money around here. We don't screw around. I'm like, I'm still building. And then July, August, September, where we make $3,000. And he's annoying me at all times because he's doing sales of discs and they're selling them to AOL and they're doing millions. And here I am in my office not producing much. So it's October 17th. And I called a meeting with everybody. And I said, you know what? I can see that I'm not meeting your expectations. And even though we signed a 2-year deal, I am going to pay you back all of the salary that you paid me from January till right now. I'm going to pay it back to you. Can't pay it now. I have to give you a promissory note. And I'll take the business as of October 1. All the receivables, and I'll just take the business. Because it's clearly not doing what you think it should. Okay, we'll take that deal.
Little did they know.
October, we do 15,000. November, we do 17,000. December, 23,000. And that business just, right on the inflection point. And that business was sold to a company out in Colorado called Navidec, who brought me in to create an automotive solution. And from there, I architected a new way of doing online sales for automobiles because there are 19 states that prohibit brokering, prohibit anybody other than a dealer from making money on the sale of an automobile. So everybody had been just selling leads, and that business was going to go away because you're not going to pay $15 for the same lead that somebody else paid $15 for. That went away. So using what my legal background and what I thought would work in business, we developed a model, and the Wall Street Journal picked it up, and Texas approved it. They were the first ones. They were the toughest state in the union, and thus became driveoff.com. And Wells Fargo came in and made a substantial investment, and then Microsoft came in with Ford, because they were partners, Ford Direct and Microsoft, and took over the whole thing in 99. And 2001 is the dot-com bubble. Right at the beginning, MSN loses $300 million. We get put on the chopping blocks. I have to terminate 77 people and announce that I also was dealing with cancer at the time.
Wow.
So this is the same meeting, guy. You're like, I'm telling the employees, you lost your job and I got to go home and get well. And I'm laughing about it now, but it was, a little more somber at the time.
Yeah, thankfully you're all right now. That's
so
crazy.
Yeah, all good. And that's drive off. So I go home and I stopthejunkmail.com and RC Airport, completely unrelated. Stop the Junk Mail was a way for you to, throttle the catalogs that come into your house. And I ended up selling that to somebody. And then RC Airport, I end up merging with a nascent competitor, RC Universe, and we build that into the largest online community for radio control flying enthusiasts, of which I am one. And in doing that, part of what I created was an online marketplace that nobody had ever done offer and acceptance before. So again, I'm a lawyer, and in contracts, we learn all about offer and acceptance. And eBay was doing auctions, but they weren't doing what I wanted to do, which was, I didn't like auctions. I thought they were messy and there were too many hurdles and people, they reserve price and what is this? And so I create this marketplace where when you go to sell an OS 60 engine, I already know what the other 20 sales of an OS 60 engine were. I know how long it was on the market. I know what they sold for, right? And I can take that back data and have kind of a blue book to advise you on what you should sell it for. So I'm doing that. So the instant when you list it, it understands your product. So it was part of the product guide. So in 2004, we get a call from eBay. Hey, that's a pretty cool system you have there. Can you license it? And I'm thinking, no, you could just buy the company because they were doing very well. And we didn't make the deal. And what you see now on eBay, when you go to sell an iPhone and it knows all the different models of the iPhone and it puts the specs in for you, that's where that came from.
That was your tech. They copied it?
It was the idea. They didn't use any of the tech, but that's what we were doing very early on.
Wow.
That marketplace is what spawned the idea for Kango, which was syndicating as many newspapers around the country into a single marketplace so that they could compete with Craigslist and eBay at the time in 2007. And that company was acquired by Media News Group and Hearst in a joint deal. And they took RC Universe along with it. And they bought the whole package. And I was with them until 2010. And for various reasons, I got out. And my COO, who's now the COO of Eventsquid, Joe Conti, ran that for another 9 years. And I went off to do what is now Eventsquid. Started out as an event platform in the radio control community, again, because I know that market and I'm able to write code and put together marketing and do the contracts and really beta the thing to make sure that that it works. And so that's how Eventsquid got started. You have me going from radio control and then archery, bodybuilding, sport shooting, golf. And then we get approached in the corporate world by Comcast Business. And they said, can you do this in corporate? And of course, we're like, and they beat the crap out of us for a couple of years, to get it right for corporate. But that's the journey. And yeah, easy team manager. I mean, this is an example of one son was in baseball, the other son was in hockey. And I'm thinking active sports, everybody knows active. You could put your team on active and do the stats, but it was horrible, absolutely dreadful. So I just built an entire system and then other teams started to join it. I didn't market it. And I don't know, we had like 1,000 teams or something. And I didn't have time for it. It was really so that my wife could look at one calendar and see what both boys were doing, and then look at their averages, and and the coaches could. It was just fun. It was just a fun hobby project, and sold that off too.
Wow, what a ride! It's an amazing journey, and I think a good transition into Eventsquid specifically, which I want to spend some time on. So when you think about from starting that till where you are today, I think product iteration, especially in SaaS platforms, is so amazing to look at, right? You pick a point in time and then look back at like what you did right, what you did wrong, what you added, and then ended up getting rid of. Can you talk about that evolution a little bit and kind of what the core of the product was initially, and kind of today? What are the key differentiators?
If you look at the two different markets that the products serve, one from 2012 to 2015, and then we make the cut over to corporate in earnest, and we start dropping off these verticals. A couple of things happen. Number one, in order to make it in the vertical market, the software has to be 100% self-serve. Otherwise, it doesn't scale. It has to be able to serve the event host and the registrant. So the registrant needs to come on and go, hey, where's an archery tournament within 100 miles of me in September? And be able to find the event, click into the event, register for the event, right? And then because that person is in a niche, they're probably going to come back another time. So when they go to an event in a completely different place and they hit that reg form, they already know what that reg form looks like, and it's already got their information, and they can register for that particular event, all right? But from the setup perspective, you're talking about fairly complicated events: spectators, competitors, vendors, and sponsors. And so how does the admin get into the software, create this stuff without instruction? All right. So that was the initial 3 years, was getting the software in a place to cater to those kinds of events with spectators, tickets, not concurrent sessions in a conference, but competitive classes like, yeoman, bowman, marksman first class, whatever it is, an archery or gun shooting. And so we built it for that. Then what we started to see was we were having to become experts in each vertical market we dipped our toes into. So for bodybuilding, I wrote a tablet judging app that dispensed with paper. These bodybuilding contests were spending 3 hours tabulating scores from 5 to 7 different judges. And this software did it before they were done judging. And it was locked in, and it was fair, and it eliminated cheating. And we got, so that's an example of how deep we had to go into the industry. But
every vertical had different things like that.
And you can't, I would have had to raise millions of dollars, scale staff and everything else to dominate these vertical markets that may or may not be able to support that level of software capability. The other thing we saw is that the more features we added, the harder it was for users to get a grip on it without help. And my COO and I sat down and we said, and this is then Comcast comes into the fold, and we start training these people. And we realized that when we trained them, we had much better success rates. And that's when we made the decision over time to let go of the verticals, stay in corporate, and now pivot around to, what the corporate planner really needed. So you asked for some of the pitfalls. We were developing so rapidly because we could. It was at the time, up until 2016, it was just me. So somebody'd say, hey, can you guys do this? Yeah. Later tonight you can.
You're building everything.
And code it out. But that makes for, haphazard, no process.
No testing.
UI testing wasn't, or UX testing wasn't the best. I'm pretty good at getting it right the first time. But even if you're 85% right and you have major clients out there, they're not going to tolerate that. So the first thing we did, we got a CTO, and then in 2017, we really focused on process. A feature gets requested. We analyze it. We look at how many clients it will serve, what's the opportunity, what's the cost, what's the benefit, and then how do we implement? How do we QA? and then finally release. So we got a lot more disciplined in an agile approach to periodic releases. Once a week is periodic, but it still is. It's fast. We're still fast, right? You got to be fast, but you don't have to be haphazard. And so we learned that, and we also learned a good bit about standardizing a lot of the elements in the code that don't happen when you're firing away. You'll do inline styles and get it out there, and that's no good. That doesn't scale. So a lot of impediments to scalability. And then security became a massive issue just in the country. We finally became aware of those things. And so we had to go through the process of being penetration tested, and we're doing business with government agencies, military, satellite launches now with United Launch Alliance, and you've got to be buttoned down. So we had to take that on. And, when you play with the big boys, you have to gird up like a big boy.
Yeah.
And there's just a lot
to do.
A lot to do. And, what happens, I call it spinning up the tornado. I spun the tornado and now I have no control over it. So you either hang or, get blown away. And so we're hanging.
One thing I like to talk through is like marketing tactics that work to acquire customers. So when you guys shifted to the corporate focus, was there anything out of the box that you tried? Like I'm imagining if I'm a corporation, I'm trying to discover an event planning software, an event, end-to-end event solution. Where am I looking? Maybe like Google search or native things like that. But are there any unique things you tried to kind of get that initial tranche of customers?
We partnered up with a company called Connect Marketplace. Connect Marketplace is, I believe, the largest provider of what are called hosted buyer trade shows, reverse trade shows. So it's like speed dating. You get 7 minutes at the table with an event planner, and then you move on. And before that event, you answer a bunch of questions and you match make, and they pick you and you pick them, and then you get scheduled out, and literally there's a clock on the wall and you have 7 minutes to say your piece and get the hell to the next table. I think you get a minute to get to the next table. So I would go to these shows and I'd have 30 meetings at each day. And I'd talk about wiping you butt out. I mean, they're tough, but it got me a chance to go one-on-one and have my 5 to 7 minutes and make that appeal. So it really is mini Shark Tank, every table. So I had never done that before, but it worked extremely well to get us into that world. And then I went to Connect's leadership and got them on our software to use it for their registration.
For their own event.
So
nice.
Every event planner that goes to a Connect show is registering through Eventsquid.
That's smart.
They get to see it and experience it. So I would call that out as the most unique thing we did to start. And now we have a more focused approach. So continuing education tracking is a big thing in our software. So we'll go to trade groups, societies, associations, so accountants, lawyers, collegiate planners, and we'll directly, we'll either put on a seminar for them, talk about substance, not promote the software, but really talk about, how to track this stuff and, how to do the virtual event. And then that engenders trust amongst that group. And invariably, they'll come and say, "Oh, your software does that." I mean, of course, we mentioned it, but that's another way to do it. So it's really very personal the way we hit this market.
What are the unit economics today? So I saw on your site, like you don't charge for additional admin seats. You don't charge for how does it scale? Is it number of events a company hosts and you just charge them a license fee? Is it pretty simple, or what's the model look like?
It's an annual license fee. That is calculated based in large part on the number of expected attendees. So that's not unique. What's unique is that everything's included. So we don't bang you for every feature. Investment bankers hate that, but I don't care about investment bankers. And planners love it because they're not looking over their shoulder going, "Oh, did we get the right package?" And some of our clients, our competitors, you have to have a degree in forensic accounting to figure out what you're going to get charged on
Right.
the license, because admin users, attendees, percent of credit card, and all these other things that really complicate the business model. The other thing is that we're not hard asses. So you tell me you're going to have 500 and you end up having 575. What, I'm going to clip you for another couple $100 and annoy the crap out of you? No, it's the way it is. So it's a very relaxed model, and it's an annual license subscription.
The people listening, we may have a few event planners listening, but the majority of people are everyday people that would be attending events. And I think when I like to talk about the competitive landscape a bit and think through, from their perspective, what might they see? So an average person might think of Eventbrite. It might be the one that comes to mind because that's where they've bought a ticket or attended an event or two in the past couple of years. How do you stack up against Eventbrite? Like, is it apples and oranges? Do you do different things? And what else about the competitive landscape is noteworthy?
So Eventbrite does simplicity well. They do tickets well. What they don't do at all, I don't know if they even try to do it, are more complex events. So Eventbrite, people usually, our clients will graduate from Eventbrite and then come to us.
Gotcha.
So it's the level of complexity in your event. So you're running a 3-day event. You've got concurrent sessions on each day, and then you have certain offerings that you don't want to offer registrants of one type, but you do want to offer another type, and then plenary discounts, and then individual discounts, and all kinds of cray-cray that people come up with. So our software, people will come to us when they need that level of flexibility, and then also branding and privacy. So if you're on Eventbrite, everybody knows it. And at some point in a business's life, let's say they're putting on continuing education courses and they're charging a couple of grand.
Yeah, you can't be powered by Eventbrite.
And then the reporting is not the same. So we have a high level of reporting and then speaker management and abstract management, agenda management, and all the things that Eventbrite's not built for that. They're more of a simple event, a one-off. I'm buying a ticket. I'm going to come in and, that's it. And then you get guest registration. So imagine companies has a once a year event. They take their top salespeople to some far-flung place for 5 days. They can bring a spouse. They got the person who's going is going to register for the things they want to do on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And then the spouse is a guest of the registrant and has a different menu of things, but they still have to know what they want to do. So it gets really complicated. So that's the best way to describe it. Now, Cvent is the 800-pound gorilla in the space. There's Bizibo, there's Eventry, Eventsair, which I think changed their name recently, Huva, Pathable, and a couple of other ones that come to mind that do a credible job. But what I've learned in this space is that price, simplicity, and then the one little feature that annoys the crap out of the planner that one software package doesn't have and one does will often tip the balance in this landscape. So we compete very well on price. We compete on what I would call thoughtful software enhancements, the stuff you wouldn't think about that is inconvenient to planners, because we engage with all of our clients. And Matt does this for us, and he knows to a client what irritates the clients. We document that, we have records, and then we look and see, hey, what's bubbling up as the number one irritant, and let's make a feature to make that easier. And that I'm amazed all the time, and I shouldn't be, but that's the part where I say, with joy and efficiency, they should interact with their software. When you can flick that switch and make somebody happy because you solved that one problem that's irritating, it keeps them loyal.
Yeah, I feel like one of the big goals for software companies is like, how do we create advocates? And there's no better way to create an advocate than to take user feedback, actually incorporate it, and then close the loop and let them know, and then they start using it. So I totally agree. A question I have, because during my day job, I spend some time pitching as well and demoing all the time. I'm curious, what are the 1 to 2 things, and you've been doing this for a long time, so you're probably a pro, but what are the 1 to 2 things that as you're demoing in the last 6 to 12 months, you still feel like the product isn't quite there yet on, and you want to improve? Like, what are those things that come top of mind?
So they are things that we're working on.
Definitely.
One, a badge designer. So being able to lay out and design a badge and then enable the client to use a standard printer and print the badges on site without having to rent equipment from us or a third party. So on-demand badges is one thing. We'll be launching in September what we call a VEO, VEO, Virtual Event Organizer. And this will enable planners to consolidate all of their Zoom and static video links into buttons, not copyable links anymore, into one area so that an attendee doesn't have to fish around their email and go, where am I supposed to go now? Or click on their calendar and try to find it. They'll have everything in front of them and they can review the speaker, check in and out of the session, rate the session, read about the session, and then of course join the session. And so those are things that, we've been working on, and I would love for that, I want them to get done, and they will be done this year. And there's a lot, we call it the squid pen instead of the bullpen, and it's filled.
It's long.
Suggestions. And the priorities do change. Continuing education was one that we just rolled out that was massive in my mind for a year. And we finally now have a way to track you from registration through check-in and deliver a transcript to your account so you can pull your credits. And then the last piece of that, the same software that allows you to design a badge allows you to design certificates. So we'll be able to certificate the attendees in each session using the same tool.
Yeah, I feel like you guys have a quick iteration cycle, so I'm sure those things don't stay in the squid pen for long. But I'd be remiss to talk about how like COVID's impacting your business. I'm sure you've got this question 1,000 times. And for the event space, obviously a lot of the in-person events were temporarily disrupted. They'll come back, I think. But there's a lot of virtual events happening where there's a lot of white space. Like there really aren't players that have designed from the ground up software solutions to solve that. So I'm curious, how are you thinking about that? Does your software work for it? Have you adjusted? Talk about that a little bit.
We have. And the VEO that I was talking about, the Virtual Event Organizer, handles this. So from my perspective, virtual is just a different venue. We're not meeting at the hotel, we're meeting virtually. So yes, it has implications on how you plan your event. How many days does the event go over? You can't replicate one-to-one a two and a half day conference into a 2.5 day virtual event. It's not going to work. And you have all these exhibitor issues and whatnot. But from a software perspective, I wouldn't write software from the ground up to do this. It doesn't make sense. You have experts in the delivery field, which would be Zoom, GoToMeeting, WebEx. They deliver streaming. And they've bolted on some quasi-registration tools, but they're not trying to be in our business. And from my perspective, I'm not trying to be in theirs. Those are, bazillion dollars investments over those, several companies. So why am I going to try to do that, right? So what we do is we're agnostic to who you use, but what we realize is the break point for a virtual event, the difficulty for the event planner is having a place for the attendee to go so they don't, one place. So it's easy to go, join this session, join this one, or add this to my itinerary. That's what we're handling. But underlying all of that is a framework that exists whether the event is live or virtual. So when you set up your event, if you determine these are the prices, this is when the sessions are, this is the type of person that can register, that framework shouldn't change whether it's live or virtual. And if you have a hybrid event, you should be able to do both in the same event. So we're going to stack the virtual event organizer right on top of the existing software. It's not going to be any extra charge for our clients because they need it. And our response to COVID, and that was the beginning of your question, we've seen a 10, 11% drop in our revenue. But what's interesting is I expected a much more precipitous drop, and it's being backfilled by these entities that can go virtual. Now, to be sure, there are some that have just punted till next year. You just can't have the same thing, and they don't want to, and they're not trying to. But for those who are, and I spent time on the phone today again with a couple of clients going through this, we collaborate with them on strategy. We have given relief where appropriate to clients who have had to push off events. We understand the position they're in, and we've given them strategies on how to cope with the migration. And so the software needs to follow, and that's what we're doing.
Do you think there's now going to be a whole new cohort of people who wouldn't have had an event because they previously only thought in person was needed, and there was a lot of logistics, et cetera, they had to go through, that now are doing virtual events, and there'll be almost like a whole ancillary market of events? Or you think it's really the people just shifting the way they do it?
No, I think people can't wait to get out of them. I think they suck. Okay. They do. We'll help you because you have to do it, but there's a very small segment of events that I think are really tailored for virtual. And those might be continuing education events with maybe 1, 2, 3, 8 different sessions. And you pick what you're going to do. You go in, you check in, you get your credit, you listen, and you check out. It's like online school. And if you've ever done online school, you know it sucks also.
Right. It sucks.
It lacks everything. Is it a stopgap? Yeah. Will it become a new burgeoning industry? No. What it's going to do, though, having said that, is I don't think it's just raising people's awareness and acumen with that software. So if you're a company and you have internal meetings and it's getting the board together or getting, teams together from across the country, you will be using virtual, but you could have done that before. And you don't necessarily need registration software, although it makes it easier in many cases. That's where companies like WebEx and Zoom and whatnot will benefit from the incremental usage. But do I think it's a revolution? Mm-mm.
That's fair. I really like what you said earlier about how people need a place to go. Like when you think of a physical event, they check in. Usually everything's on premises. It's easy for them to connect with what's going on. Virtually, I totally agree. It could be easy to get lost and feel like you're not, important. So that makes sense.
Look, what you've just hit on is the concept of time compression. So if I go to a 2-day event, I'm there for the most part, other than, the bar and the usual distractions, gambling if you're in Vegas. I'm there and I have cut out that time. I have blocked my schedule and told everybody I'm out of town. When you're not there, you maybe have 1 hour or 2 hours, and then you got distractions coming in. You can't commit. So we took a client that had a 3-day trade show around passenger vessels, mini cruise ships, not the big ones, but the medium-sized to small ones. And we turned it into a 20-day virtual event.
Okay.
Because they had to give the vendors, 5 vendors a day, an hour to have their own Zoom rooms, and people could register to go see them. Yeah. And that was the only way to get meaningful interaction and get the exhibitors to participate. And ironically, by filtering the audience that way, they are self-selecting. Each vendor has a self-selected group of potential clients that have chosen to come to them. They'll actually get higher quality leads than, hey, walk by my booth and scan the QR code for a prize.
Yeah, like want a free mug.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, no, it totally is. And so I want to shift to some of the other questions around just like you as a leader and your experience with startups. I think one to hit on quickly is, in the COVID environment, if you think about your experience as a leader and running this company and interacting with your team members, you've done this a lot of times I'm sure in offices mostly. How has that changed? And what have you seen kind of pain points through that?
It hasn't changed because all of us work remotely and have for years. Nice. So it was now the messaging has changed, and, our assurances to them that we were keeping everybody on, and there was no fried calamari going to be happening on my watch. And so all the squids are intact.
Yeah, that's great. Well, a question I'd like to ask on the show is around hiring. So I think and a lot of people would echo it that I've talked to. I think hiring is one of the most important things you can do. If you get superstars on your team, it makes your life easier. It makes the business run faster. When you look to hire people, what have proven to be the consistent qualities across, the superstars that you have on your team?
Undying commitment to whatever. You have to have the heart. It's best exemplified by, if somebody asks me what the benefits are in the interview, they're not going to make the cut. You have to be here because you really love the concept and you like an intimate team. We're a small company, 9, 10, depending on the day, and a couple of contractors. You have to be all in. And we historically, with the other companies I've had and with this one, the people I have gone to initially are ones where I get a sense of hyper competence and hyper commitment. And that doesn't mean you're going to work until you're ground to a stump, but it does mean that you're going to think of things on your own. You're here for a reason. So I don't have to think about what I'm paying you to think about. And I really like it that way. And I will tell people, I'll say, I'm the easiest person to work for and the hardest person to work for. I'm real easy because I'm not going to look over your shoulder. But I expect a great deal out of you to do what I hired you to do. I won't second guess what you're doing. And if I do second guess, I just want an answer. I want solutions. And so that's how it goes. We have a wonderful track record with the people we've hired, and they've been with us. I mean, it hasn't been that long. We started hiring in 2016. So everybody but one person who lasted 30 days because they had some sort of implosion, a divorce or something, and just, dropped out of life. But everybody has stayed and they enjoy it. So I don't know. I don't know if that helps you. It's not what's on the paper. I mean, yeah, you have to be competent in your area, but how can you communicate with me? Can you relate to me like a human? Do you have deep-seated insecurities that are going to make you do screwed up things? It was normal people that, hustle. That's all. And do what they're supposed to do.
A funny thing off that is what people forget is, like, let's say you're paying someone $75K. They have to generate $75,001 or hopefully more of value for you and the business, or else it doesn't make sense. And like sometimes I think people forget that, when you bring someone on. So I think that makes a lot of sense. A question I have for you around mentor advice. So in your career, I'm sure you've had a lot of different, mentors and partners, and I'm sure you serve as a mentor for a lot of people today. What are some of the best pieces of mentor advice you've gotten along your entrepreneurial journey?
That I've gotten?
Yeah, gotten or given.
I don't stop talking long enough to get advice. So that's been a problem for me. The best advice that I've ever gotten in business is from my late father. And I would go to him with these conundra, and it's a simple rule. And I say, I don't know what to do, Dad. And he'd say, if you were him or her, what would you want you to do? And so I try to approach negotiation, customer service, employee relations, standing in the shoes of the person with whom I'm relating. And that gives me a real balance and a check on what I'm doing. And it applies everywhere. The other pieces of advice that I routinely will share with any person in business all revolve around communication. Learn how to write, for heck's sake. Get a command of the vocabulary, pay attention to punctuation and capitalization and paragraphing, and don't give me this, it's just an email or it's casual and you've got to. Writing has been responsible for more revenue in my life than anything. And that Hearst deal I talked to you about, we got that because before I got down to Hearst, they had circulated a white paper that I had written almost a year earlier. And they had been trying to find me because they liked what it said. And when I walked into that 25-person meeting and somebody held a raggedy copy of it with highlighter on it and said, "Did you write this?"
Yeah, you're like, let's
I
go.
knew. I knew I had them. And those things, whether it's marketing, whether it's a breakthrough correspondence to try to get somebody's attention in one paragraph, however you master that skill, just do it well. And then the art of oral presentation, the art of listening to the audience, reacting. If you're doing a demo and you've got somebody on camera, believe me, I'm looking at your eyebrows, I'm looking at your eyes. I want to see where you're going. And then I'm going to navigate where I think you need to go based on the reaction and also based on the substance of your question. So communication, written and oral, are absolutely the keys to at least my success. I know if you're an engineer and what you do down in a microchip or in the code, that might be the key. That might be the way you communicate. And that's your language, and that's fine. Okay. But if you're in a position, if you're a founder and you are out front, you better be able to communicate. And then the thing that's right behind that is product knowledge. Know your product, know your market, know your numbers. Just be facile with all that. When people, there are always going to be things you have to get back to them on. But the more facile you are with your own business and your command over what's going on, the more credibility you have. So I can sit in a room with their CTO, their CEO, and their event planner and answer questions on all three levels about tech, finance, and operations, so that they're going to look at each other and go, oh, these guys know what they're doing. They're people on the other side. They're just people. And, you want them to go, oh, we want that guy on our team. He's good.
That's so true. The basic communication, especially the writing, I think like writing copy and getting people to understand what you're saying. Yeah, writing oral is so important. I think people overlook that sometimes, and they focus on like the technical ability, and that goes, under the radar.
You could have a great product. If you can't communicate how great it is, people aren't going to buy it. I mean, word of mouth, yes, I get it. But when you're getting started, it's those initial people you have to convince for an investment or for a partnership that you want to be able to communicate with.
A question I have that I like to ask is around, things you wish you knew when you started. So I would say you have to go through the journey you went through. You have to experience the ups and downs to get to where you are, to come up with the ideas. But if you could teleport back to the first couple months you were starting, let's say the first couple months of Eventsquid, what are some things that you would tell yourself?
Stick with it. Because there was a time when I almost punted. I was beat up, and I went and had a beer with my friend, who's a very prominent public speaker worldwide. And he said in his Australian accent, Mike, do what you do. Don't back down. Don't contract. Do what you do. And he was and it was a simple message. And it's going to get hard. There's going to be at least one time when you go, what am I doing? It's just be easier to sell t-shirts on a cart downtown than this shit, right? I can't take it anymore. But keep on keeping on. Tap into what brought you to where you are. But at the same time, take critical looks at what you're doing, and it may be time to stop. So another example I give is, in 2012, I released the first digital issue of RC Pilot magazine. It was an all-tablet magazine, the first of its kind. The president of Hearst looked at it and said, this is one of the best digital magazines we've ever seen. And yet, 7 months into it, the radio control community, which the average demographic was like 60 years old, they weren't using it because they couldn't roll it up and bring it into the bathroom, right? But the product was so good. And I remember, again, my dad said to me, he goes, when are you going to cry uncle? And that was the first time I had to look at myself and go, wow, he's right. A great product, but the market's not right. So yeah, times are going to get tough. Stay motivated, but also you have to keep your reality glasses on and ask yourself, is this going to work, or is this just a hobby? It's okay if it doesn't work. And And yeah, you sunk all of that intellectual capital, time, and money into it. Move on, sunk cost rule, you know the drill.
Totally.
So those are a couple of
Yeah,
things.
those are solid pieces of advice. Given that you started so many businesses in different verticals, I feel like you have a good feel for trends and trend sensing. Other than the event space that you know backwards and forwards, what are some market trends that you see emerging either as like a consumer that you're just excited to, buy products and services and use, or like if you were to put your investor hat on, things that you think in the next 2 to 3 years are really attractive to start looking at?
I don't know that I have any particular wisdom on that.
Okay.
I'm deeply concerned about the democracy we live in. For the first time, in my whole life, I really spend a lot of mental cycles looking at the environment in which we conduct business, and it's not just for personal enrichment's sake. It bothers me, and you can run the clock out on your own life and hoard and make a bunch of money, and maybe survive whatever's going on. But if you do that, it means, ultimately you're just focused on yourself. And if you look around at what's going on in the country, no matter which side of the aisle you sit on, you have to be disturbed by the environment. And as a business person, you have to be cognizant of that when you're starting your business. It will affect you. So for me, my next endeavor is going to be in the world of education, in the world of critical thinking, and helping people take any situation, any conversation, what they read on social media, and really parse that for its validity, to take a measured, more thoughtful approach. So I know that doesn't directly answer your question, but AI for reals is coming, and I distinguish that from what people say is AI. There's machine learning and true artificial intelligence. I think that battery technology is a fascinating space that's going to change a lot of different things. So anything from automotive to aircraft, whole industries, anything to do with renewable resources, and those businesses, get on the train, baby. When the
Yeah.
automotive companies are leading the way, we're behind, right? And software. I mean, how can you not be facile with either using front end software like an Adobe Creative Suite, or accounting software, whatever you're using? The new generation has got to be focused on software, and that means there's going to be insatiable demand for people that can write, design, and execute code. And so I guess those are three areas that I see a lot of promise in.
Yeah, that's great. I think if you're someone who can have that written and oral communication and have any technical ability to write software, I mean, look out. This is the environment for you for sure. That's great. So I have three more questions for you. The first one is around learning and resources. So are there any books, newsletters, podcasts, follows on social media, or really any other resources that you like that you'd recommend for either an aspiring founder or really anyone who's just interested in any of the things that you like to do?
I'm bad that way. I mean, I've got some books on my shelf, that I've gone through, the why, and Dan Ariely, Freakonomics, and there's some cool stuff in there. But I'm usually doing, tinkering, and if I'm not working, I'm playing with radio controlled toys. So I'm not the person to go to for that advice.
I share the same. Like I feel like I'm always trying to do something else. Like I just can't sit down and read a full book. I've never been able to. But I mean, to each their own. Some people learn different ways. So I totally agree with that. All right. So last two questions. We ask these to every guest. So I'm really pumped to get your take on these. So the first one is the startup manifesto. So some of this you may have mentioned in answers before, but if you had to write a startup manifesto with 5 of the most important key lessons or pitfalls to avoid when starting out, what would they be?
Know why you're doing what you're doing would be number one. Ignore the pressure of your competition, but don't ignore your competition. understand what they're doing as a guide, but don't be obsessed by them. 3, make sure you have support around you in order to engage in what you're about to engage in. These things are all consuming. I can't even overstate how all consuming they are. And when I tell you, for years, I was doing 14 to 16 hour days till 3 a.m. and loving every minute of it. My wife even recognized me during those years a couple of times. So have the support of the people around you. If you have newborn kids and whatnot, you have a candid conversation with your spouse about which one of you is going to take care of the kids, because one of you is going to be absent. If you don't have a particular skill, acquire the skill by getting somebody else to do what you can't do. Clint Eastwood, man's got to know his limitations, and you've got to know your limitations. If you happen to have a broad skill set and you can trot stuff out and test it in the market, that's just an advantage for you. But most people fall short in one area or another, whether it's marketing, design, execution, code, whatever it is. Know what you can't do. And then I would say give yourself benchmarks, goalposts. You don't, and make them realistic. Everybody's not going to be Mark Zuckerberg or Jobs or Gates or whatever. So it's okay if your first deal yields you $750,000. Yay you, now go do the next one. You don't have to hit the home run right now. If you do, wonderful. Don't aim for that. Don't swing for the fence. Swing for a single, make a good product. So when you set your goal, and on your way to saying, hey, here's my all the way to bright product, if you can envision that, and you never will, because if you're doing software, it'll keep going. But sometimes if it's just, I want to make the best craft beer, you're always going to let's make a flavored craft beer. There's always going to be something more. That's how people are. They just want more. So when you set your goalposts, make them realistic, and then benchmark yourself. And then take a good hard look when you get there. Oh, wow. We have crappy sales, and don't rationalize it. Well, that's because there was a hop shortage, and, you get one of those. Okay. You can do an excuse. What I like better is just facing up and going, wow, we screwed that one up. I'll tell you what, I love this product. I have too much passion for it. I don't want to give up, but I'm going to stop at the end of next quarter. If we don't have any sales, the market's telling me we're doing something wrong. We're going to pull back and reevaluate. So that's really about interim goal setting, and at the same time, managing your own expectations and not managing to other people's expectations. And that would be a corollary. A lot of people will go out early for money, and then there's somebody else's biatch. Okay. And it skews how the product comes out. It skews the vision. If the investor is not, and by definition, a monetary investor is not good. They're going to think your idea is great until they need to get paid back.
Yeah.
And that it dilutes your, so pick your investors wisely too. Okay. That was 6.
That's a great list, and the bonus. And then the second question we asked everyone is a nomination. So this is a way that the show's grown, and we have everyone who comes on nominate a fellow founder. So it's your turn to nominate another founder that's either a friend, colleague, or mentor of yours that you'd like to see on the show in the future.
You're going to make me think of this person right here, announce their name in public.
Exactly. That's the goal.
Connor Doobie.
Okay.
He's in Denver, and I did his podcast yesterday.
Okay.
Mile High Mentors. But this kid is 28, and he has developed a practice and a competence and a manner that he's the kind of guy I would hire. I just think he's done a great job at a young age, and will give your folks a different perspective on a lot of the same things we talked about, except he'll have hair and look a lot better than me.
It's been called out. So Connor, we'll have to get him on the show. Thank you for that. Yeah. So before we wrap, I want to take a second and acknowledge you. I think, in hearing your story, the curiosity and just the overall grit that you exhibited through the journey is super inspiring. And I think I've certainly taken a lot from your story, and I hope that a lot of people that listen do as well. And I'm really excited to, be a big supporter of Eventsquid and all your other endeavors as you continue to go on the journey. So thank you for coming on.
And thank you. And I know this is an opportunity for you and an endeavor as well. And I wish you good luck. And anytime you want to rip my ear off, you can send me an email and we'll get on the phone and hash it out.
Sounds great. Before you wrap, do you just want to mention the website and any social media for Eventsquid?
Sure. It's simply eventsquid.com. You'll find all that you need right there.
Awesome. Michael Kranitz, founder of Eventsquid. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you for listening to that episode with Michael Kranitz of Eventsquid. If you want to support the show, there's a couple quick things you could do that would really help us out. 1, subscribe to our show on Apple Podcasts. If you go on Apple Podcasts, please leave us a 5-star rating and a couple sentence positive review on why the show inspired you. These ratings and reviews are super important, and they signal to Apple that they should put our show in front of other people that might like it. 2, follow us on Instagram at Founder Podcast. Each week we put out teasers, audio clips, and important quotes from the episode. And lastly, check out our website as a mission control for the show. Go to thefounderpod.com. We have a page on there called Special Offers where we link up all the discount codes from our founders' companies, as well as the books and resources that they've recommended across the show. I hope you enjoyed that episode and are looking forward to the next one. Until then, I'm Kallaway, and this is The Founder.